AI can translate your content in seconds, but without the right context, it sounds like AI translated your content. And to make matters worse, even if you fix the quality, you still have to manage all of this. The starter kit you're about to see ensures you get great quality and can manage translations at scale. You'll see best practices like managing your translation context as data, such as your glossaries and style guides. Then you'll see how we can translate a single document using AI to multiple locales. Then you'll see a workflow on how to manage stale translations. So you modify that source English document, but what about the documents that have already been translated? Then at the end, you'll see how to manage translations at scale. You'll get a bird's eye view of the status of all of your translations. You can bulk translate content and group together the translations and release them all at once. Let's dive into Sanity Studio, where we will see a couple of document types here that define our translation context, starting with our glossaries. Here we have an e-commerce terminology glossary, so we can provide context to the LLMs. The more information we provide here, the better results we're going to get. So for example, we define individual terms like add to cart, and we say whether or not we can translate this one or not, what part of speech it is, the definition, usage examples, and we can even provide translations up front so we always get consistent results here. Now let's switch over to our style guides, which is another form of context that the AI translations will use during every translation. We can define one for every locale, so let's open up the Spanish Mexico version, where we'll see the locale it's targeting, the formality we want the translations to respect. So in this case, we're going for informal. We define some adjectives here for our brand voice and additional instructions like used to the informal version. Now, all of this is entirely configurable, so you can add and remove fields or do whatever makes sense for your business. Now, these can take a bit of time to generate, so here's a quick trick that you can use. If you head over to Content Agent, you can ask it to generate a new glossary for my translations, look at my blogs and docs to infer the brand terms, then it'll go through all of my content and be able to give me a great starter kit for these glossaries and style guides, and then from there I can modify it to really dial it in. As an AI user, you probably know that if you don't provide a lot of context, you're going to get generic AI slop. These documents provide the necessary context to ensure you're going to get great quality translations, and they're configurable by editors, so you can tweak them over time. Next, we're going to see how we translate an individual document and use those rules. Let's head back over to Sanity Studio, where we are going to modify an article. And first up, we're going to translate it as it is, and then we're going to get into modifying some of this content like the date. Let's open up our translations here, and we will see that this has not been translated to any of our locales yet. There are a couple of fallbacks here for other English-speaking countries, but we want to create these translations. We were looking at the Spanish Mexico version before. Let's do that, and let's also grab German and translate both of these. Now it's going to kick off those translations as we can see right here. And while that is working, I'll show you just a quick under the hood peek here that within the Sanity API, what's happening is we have this agent action translate where we pass it all of the context that we were just working on within Sanity Studio. And from here, it will translate the document while respecting our tone of voice, our glossary, and even our schema. Agent actions are schema aware, so it knows your different fields. It knows what our reference is, so when it translates your content, it'll respect the shape of your schema. Let's head back over to Sanity Studio. Okay, we can see that we have these two translations are done and they need review. So let's open up each one. We will head over to the Spanish Mexico version first. Here we can see which locale we're on, that this was AI translated, and it needs review. And I'll note too that this workflow enforces that we review it before we're able to publish it. We can definitely change this and gear it towards our own business needs. But from here, I'm going to open up the translations and go ahead and approve this translation. We will see it now switches to approved, and I have the ability to publish this. And we also have a log of who approved it. So we've seen that we can translate a single document to multiple locales using AI, and we have some workflow rules baked in there, like we want to ensure that each translation is reviewed before it goes live. Now, we're going to see what happens when we update that source English document and how do we deal with stale translations. Let's head back over to Sanity Studio, where we will go back over to the English version, and let's make some modifications here. Let's change the date to 2026, and let's modify the summary a little bit. Remote roads and epic bike packing. And lastly, we'll add a line at the end saying, ready to purchase the S600, add to cart. And I wanted to do this because add to cart is a glossary term. Okay, now that we've done this, I'm gonna go ahead and click publish. And we'll see that our German and Spanish translations are automatically marked as stale. So in the background, we have a sanity function listening for content changes, and it looks to see, did I modify one of the source documents where we have other documents that were translated from that source? And in this case, I do. So what do we do? Well, we can open up the documents. Let's go back to our Spanish version and open up our translations here. Here, we get an AI summary of what was changed. Like we mentioned remote roads, we have a call to action, and we changed 2025 to 2026. And then we can go on and review these on an individual field level. So this is our summary field. We can see what's the current version, what the suggested version is, and even some justification of why this change was made. We could also expand this to see exactly the changes that were made. I'm going to go ahead and apply the suggested update. And now we have our slug field, and it recommends to keep the current translation. So I'll go ahead and accept that. And lastly, we have our title, and we will go ahead and accept this as well. We could skip it if we didn't want to apply this, but let's go ahead and apply it. Great, and now we get a little summary of what was done, and we will mark this as reviewed, so we can go ahead and publish this. And now the state changes from stale to approved, and we're allowed to publish it. Now, this workflow ensures that every change is manually reviewed and approved, but you can definitely change this workflow to automate this. So if you wanted to, for example, modify that English document and automatically fire off all of the translations and send them to production, you can definitely do that. But if you need more governance and want to review all of the translations, then this workflow would be for you. Through time, those source documents are going to change. And this workflow showed how you deal with that. They're automatically marked as stale, so you can go in and review the changes and approve or reject them. And this is really great for an individual document level, but when we want to manage translations at scale across different markets and across thousands of documents, we're gonna need a different workflow for this. And that is where this other app comes into play. I'm gonna head back over to my Sanity Studio and switch from Studio to my translations dashboard. This is an app built with the Sanity App SDK, and it's built to manage our translations at scale. We get a bird's eye view right here of which documents are missing translations, which are in review, do we have any stale ones, etc. And we get to understand our translation coverage. So let's say we're working on this Mexico launch, and I can see that we've got a bit of work to go. And for our articles, for example, we can see that we're only at 29% coverage for Mexico. Let's look at those articles. And from here, we can translate them all at once. Now, instead of sending them to my drafts, I want to group these translations together so I can have a unified Mexico launch. So let's send these translations to my Mexico launch content release, which I created in Sanity Studio. And now we are going to go ahead and kick off these 40 document translations. And they are done translating. Let's head back over to Sanity Studio, and we'll head up to our releases, go to our Mexico launch, view the documents, and we'll see all the documents right here. I can also preview the site using this release, so I get to see what this Mexico launch will look like before we actually publish it. And then speaking of which, I can either run the release right now or schedule it so it'll go out exactly when we want it to. So that is how we manage translations at scale using AI and the app. Translations no longer need to be the bottleneck of our organization. Using those context documents like the style guide and glossary terms, we're able to provide the LLMs with a lot of context, ensuring that it produces accurate results. And we can even divide them up by market, so each market gets its proper attention. And then we've seen how we can translate those documents on an individual document basis to each locale. And then what happens if we update that source one? They're marked as stale, and then we're able to approve each individual change. And then we saw how do we manage translations at scale using that app where we can select all of the different documents in a given locale and translate them and see the status of where our translations are at. How many documents are stale and do we want to go in and update those? And that is how you manage translations at scale while not sacrificing your accuracy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.